The night Clara Whitmore collapsed in the snow outside Silas Brennan's gate, she had already made peace with death. Her daughter's fever-hot body had gone still against her chest. Her frozen fingers couldn't feel the child anymore. She had walked for 2 days through the Montana blizzard with nothing but a dead man's wedding ring and a promise she couldn't keep. She didn't know the scarred rancher watching from his window would become her salvation, or that his proposal would be the most desperate, honest thing anyone had ever offered her. This is a story of 2 broken souls who found redemption in the last place they expected each other. Stay with me until the end. Subscribe if you haven't already, and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The wind cut through Clara Whitmore like a blade. She couldn't feel her feet anymore, couldn't feel her hands. The only warmth left in the world was Lily's small body pressed against her chest, and even that heat was fading. "Mama!" Lily's voice came out thin, broken. "Mama, I can't breathe good." "I know, baby." Clara's lips cracked when she spoke. Blood tasted like copper on her tongue. "Just a little further. Just hold on." It was a lie. She had no idea where they were going. The wagon driver had abandoned them 2 days ago when his axle broke, taking their supplies and leaving them with nothing but the clothes on their backs and a direction north toward Silver Creek, toward her sister Ruth, who might or might not still live there. North had become meaningless in the white hell of the blizzard. Lily coughed a wet, rattling sound that made Clara's heart seize. The fever had started yesterday morning. By evening, the child couldn't walk. Now she barely spoke, her small body burning against Clara's frozen chest like a coal wrapped in ice. "Lily, baby, stay awake. Talk to Mama." Nothing. "Lily." A weak whimper. Then silence. Clara stumbled, her knee hitting something hard beneath the snow. A rock. A root. It didn't matter. She went down, twisting her body to protect Lily from the impact, and the snow swallowed them both. For a moment, she just lay there. The cold wasn't so bad anymore. That was dangerous, she knew that. When you stopped feeling the cold, death was close. But her body had given everything it had. There was nothing left. "I'm sorry, Thomas," she whispered to her dead husband. "I tried. God knows I tried." Lily's breathing had gone shallow, barely there. Clara closed her eyes. The light came from nowhere. One moment there was only darkness and snow. The next, a yellow glow cut through the white, bobbing closer like a fallen star. Clara tried to lift her head. Failed. "Please," she croaked. The word barely made it past her frozen lips. "Please, my daughter." Footsteps. Heavy boots crunching through deep snow. Then a voice rough and low. "Jesus Christ." Strong hands rolled her over. Clara blinked up at a face half hidden by a wool scarf. Dark eyes catching the lantern light. A man. Tall. Broad-shouldered. A scar running down his left cheek, silver against weathered skin. "The child," Clara managed. "Please, she's sick. She's—" The man was already moving, pulling Lily from Clara's arms with surprising gentleness. He pressed 2 fingers to the girl's neck, then yanked off his glove and touched her forehead. "She's burning up." His voice was clipped, urgent. "How long?" "Since yesterday. Maybe longer. I don't—" Clara's vision swam. "I don't remember." "Can you walk?" "I don't know." "Try." He pulled her upright with one arm, the other still cradling Lily against his chest. Clara's legs buckled immediately, but he caught her, shifting his grip. "All right, different plan." Before Clara could protest, he lifted her too, one woman under each arm, like they weighed nothing. The lantern swung from his belt, casting wild shadows across the snow. "My name's Silas," he said, already moving. "Silas Brennan. You're on my land. There's a house about 200 yards ahead. You'll make it." My daughter. She'll make it too, but we need to move. Now. He didn't wait for her response. Just started walking, his boots punching through the drifts with grim determination. Clara clung to consciousness, watching the darkness blur past, listening to Lily's labored breathing somewhere close. The house materialized from the storm like a dream. 2 stories. Dark windows. A porch buried in snow. Silas shouldered through the door, and the warmth hit Clara like a physical blow. She gasped, her frozen skin screaming as blood began to flow again. "Joe!" Silas bellowed. "Joe, get down here!" Footsteps on stairs. An older man appeared. Black gray-haired, sleep-creased face, sharpening into alertness when he saw what Silas carried. "Lord have mercy. What?" "Found them in the east pasture. Child's got fever bad. The woman's half frozen. Need hot water blankets, the medical kit." "On it!" Joe moved fast for his age, disappearing into another room. Silas laid Lily on a worn sofa near the fireplace, then turned to Clara. "Sit. Don't argue." She sat. She didn't have the strength to argue anyway. The next hour passed in fragments. Hot water. Blankets. Joe forcing warm broth between her cracked lips while Silas worked on Lily, stripping off her wet clothes and wrapping her in heated flannel. "Need the doctor," Joe said quietly. "That cough ain't good." "I know." Silas's jaw was tight. "Storm's too bad. I'll go at first light. You'll freeze before you get halfway to town." "Then I'll freeze halfway to town." He looked at Lily's flushed face and something shifted in his expression. Pain. Old pain, carefully buried. "I'm not losing another child in this house. Not again." Joe fell silent. Clara heard the words but couldn't process them. Her eyes were closing, her body finally surrendering to exhaustion, now that Lily was safe, now that someone else was in charge, now that she didn't have to be strong anymore. "Rest," Silas said, his rough voice strangely gentle. "I'll watch her." She wanted to protest, wanted to stay awake, stay alert, keep vigil over her daughter like she'd done for 2 endless days, but her body betrayed her. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Silas Brennan sitting beside Lily's makeshift bed, his scarred face lit by firelight, his calloused hand wrapped around her daughter's small fingers like he was holding something precious. Like he was holding something he'd lost. Clara woke to silence. No wind, no Lily crying, no desperate gasping for air. She bolted upright, heart hammering. The room was different, a bedroom small and spare with a window showing gray morning light. She was in a bed, clean sheets, a quilt that smelled faintly of cedar. "Lily," she croaked. "Lily." The door opened immediately. Silas stood there, still in yesterday's clothes, dark shadows under his eyes. "She's alive," he said. "Fever broke an hour ago. Joe's with her." Clara's legs nearly gave out with relief. She grabbed the bedpost, steadying herself. "I need to see her." "You will. But you should know she's weak. The fever took a lot out of her. Doc Hayes came at first light. He says she'll recover, but it'll take time." "You got the doctor. In that storm." "Storm stopped around midnight." His face was unreadable. "I left at first light, like I said." "You rode through that for my daughter. A stranger's daughter." Silas shrugged, the movement stiff. "Wasn't going to let her die." There was something in the way he said it, something raw beneath the flat tone. Clara remembered his words from last night. "I'm not losing another child in this house. Not again." "Thank you," she said softly. "I don't have words for what you did, Mr. Brennan. I don't have any way to repay you." "Don't need repaying. Come on. Your girl's been asking for you." He led her down a narrow hallway, his boots heavy on wooden floors. The house was simple, clean, but there was something empty about it. Something missing. Like someone had removed all the soft things and left only what was necessary for survival. Lily was in a small room off the kitchen, bundled in blankets on a narrow bed. Joe sat beside her, reading from a worn book in a low, soothing voice. When Clara appeared in the doorway, Lily's pale face broke into a weak smile. "Mama." Clara was across the room in 3 steps, gathering her daughter close, breathing in the familiar smell of her hair beneath the unfamiliar scent of medicine and wood smoke. "Baby. Oh, baby, I'm here. Mama's here. The man helped us." Lily's voice was a whisper. "The man with the scar. He held my hand all night. He said I was brave." Clara looked over her daughter's head at Silas, who stood in the doorway with his arms crossed, his expression carefully blank. "You were brave," he said to Lily. "Bravest little girl I ever met." Something flickered across his face there and gone. Then he turned and walked away, his footsteps fading down the hall. Joe closed his book quietly. "He don't say much, that one, but what he says he means." "How long was he with her?" "All night. Didn't sleep a wink. Just sat there holding her hand, talking to her when the fever got bad, telling her stories about horses and stars and such." Joe shook his head slowly. "Ain't seen him like that in 6 years. Not since Miss Martha passed." "His wife and son. Fire took 'em both while he was away. He blamed himself. Still does, I reckon." Joe stood, stretching his old bones. "I'll get you some breakfast. You look like you ain't eaten in days." "I haven't." "Then it's past time you did." The next 3 days passed in a blur of recovery. Lily slept mostly, her small body fighting off the last of the infection. Clara stayed by her side, leaving only when Joe or Silas insisted she eat or rest. She learned the rhythms of the house. Silas rose before dawn and worked until dark, tending horses, mending fences, hauling hay. He ate his meals, standing at the kitchen counter, barely speaking, then disappeared to the barn for the night. "He doesn't sleep in the house," Clara observed to Joe on the second evening. "Hasn't since the fire. Says there's too many ghosts in these walls." Joe stirred the pot on the stove. "I think he just can't stand the quiet. Out in the barn he can hear the horses. Reminds him something's still alive." Clara absorbed this in silence. She understood ghosts. She had her own Thomas's laugh, the way he used to sing to Lily at bedtime, the empty space beside her that would never be filled. On the 3rd morning she found Silas in the kitchen, staring at a piece of paper on the table. His shoulders were rigid, his scarred face hard as stone. "Mr. Brennan, is something wrong?" He looked up, and for a moment his walls dropped. She saw exhaustion, anger, grief, all tangled together. "Got a letter. From my cousin back in Texas." He pushed it across the table. "He's dying. Wants to make peace before he goes. That's the Christian thing to say anyway." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. We weren't close." He stood abruptly, the chair scraping. "He's the last of my blood. After him, there's no one. No one, no family, no heirs. When I die, this ranch goes to the territory." His laugh was bitter. 500 acres, 40 horses, a house full of ghosts, and not a soul to leave it to. Clara didn't know what to say. Before she could find words, Lily's voice called from the other room. "Mama, Mama, come see." She went grateful for the interruption, but Silas's words stayed with her heavy as stones. "No heirs. When I die, this ranch goes to the territory. Not a soul to leave it to." Lily's recovery brought its own complications. Once the fever broke completely, the 5-year-old's natural curiosity returned with a vengeance. She wanted to see the horses. She wanted to play in the snow. She wanted to help Joe with cooking and follow Silas around the barn. Most concerning, she wanted to talk. This was new. Since Thomas's death 6 months ago, Lily had barely spoken. She'd retreated into herself, communicating in whispers and gestures, trusting no one but Clara. The doctors in the mining town had called it shock. They'd said it might pass, or it might not. Now suddenly, words poured out of her like water from a broken dam. "Mr. Silas has 17 horses. He told me all their names. There's Thunder and Lightning and Storm. Those are the fast ones, and Patches and Buttercup. Those are the gentle ones, and there's a baby horse named Copper who doesn't have a mama anymore, so Mr. Silas feeds him with a special bottle. Clara stared at her daughter, heart swelling. He told you all that? Uh-huh. And he let me pet Buttercup. She has the softest nose in the whole world, Mama. Softer than anything. When did you talk to Mr. Silas? This morning. He was in the barn and I went to see the horses and he wasn't even mad. He picked me up so I could reach Buttercup's face and everything. Clara found Silas later that day repairing a fence near the main pasture. She watched him work for a moment, the efficient movements, the focus, the way his scarred face softened when one of the horses wandered over to investigate. Thank you, she said. He looked up, hammer pausing mid-swing. For what? Lily. She's talking again. Really talking, not just whispering. She hasn't done that since her father died. Clara's throat tightened. You did that. You and your horses. Silas shrugged, turning back to the fence. Kids like animals. Nothing special about it. It is special. To her and to me. He drove a nail with one sharp blow, then another. His back was to her, but she saw the tension in his shoulders, the careful control. She's a good kid. Easy to like. His voice was rough. Reminds me of... He stopped. The hammer hung motionless. Of your son. The silence stretched so long that Clara thought she'd crossed a line. Then Silas set down the hammer and turned to face her. His expression was shuttered, but his eyes held 6 years of grief. He would have been about her age, if he'd lived. The words came slowly, like each one cost him something. Martha was going to name him James, family name. He never got to have it. Never got to have anything. I'm sorry. Don't be. Wasn't your fault. He picked up the hammer again, but didn't swing it. World's cruel, Mrs. Whitmore. Takes what it wants, doesn't ask permission. You know that as well as I do. I do. They stood there, in the cold, two broken people who understood each other's pain without needing explanations. Storm's clearing up, Silas said finally. Road should be passable in a day or two. You got somewhere to go, someone waiting for you. My sister, in Silver Creek. At least I hope she's still there. I haven't heard from her in 2 years. And if she's not? Clara didn't answer. She didn't have an answer. Silas nodded slowly, as if her silence told him everything he needed to know. You can stay here long as you need. Room and board in exchange for work. Cooking, cleaning the house stuff I've been ignoring for 6 years. Joe's good for a lot of things, but domestic ain't one of them. That's very generous, Mr. Brennan. It's practical. Place needs a woman's hand. I need help I can trust. You need somewhere safe for your girl. He met her eyes directly. That's all it is. Nothing more. You understand? I understand. Good. He turned back to the fence, dismissing her. Supper's at 6. Don't be late. Clara didn't find her sister. A week after the storm cleared, Silas drove her into Silver Creek to make inquiries. The postmaster had no record of Ruth Harrison. The land office had no claim under that name. The few people who'd been in the territory long enough to remember said they'd heard of a woman matching Ruth's description, but she'd moved on 2 winters ago. No one knew where. Clara stood on the boardwalk outside the general store, staring at nothing, while Silas loaded supplies into the wagon. We can send letters, he said. 2 other towns. Fort Benton Helena, maybe Butte. Someone might know where she went. And if they don't... He was quiet for a moment. Then, you've got a decision to make. That night, Clara lay awake in the small bedroom that had become hers, listening to the wind rattle the windows and thinking about decisions. She had no money, no family, no skills beyond basic housework and the herbal remedies her mother had taught her. In 6 months, she'd gone from a miner's wife with a modest home to a widow with nothing but a sick child and a dead man's wedding ring. And now, Silas Brennan was offering her shelter, work, a place to belong even temporarily. Nothing more he'd said. That's all it is. She believed him. There was no heat in the way he looked at her, no hidden agenda in his gruff generosity. He was simply a man alone, who'd found people in need and chosen to help. The question was, could she accept that help? Could she live in this house, work alongside this scarred, silent rancher, and pretend it was just a business arrangement? Could she trust again after everything? Lily answered the question for her. The next morning, Clara found her daughter in the barn, sitting on an overturned bucket, watching Silas bottle feed the orphan foal. "Mama, look." Lily's face glowed with joy. "Copper's drinking all by himself." "Well, Mr. Silas is helping, but mostly by himself." Silas looked up, and Clara caught something in his expression she hadn't seen before. Something that might have been peace. "She's been out here an hour," he said. "Good company. Doesn't talk as much as Joe." "I talk lots," Lily protested. "I told you about Mama's flowers and Papa's singing, and the big mountain outside our old house, and the cat that used to steal milk, and the mean boy who threw rocks, and the lady with the fancy hat," Silas finished. "I remember. See, I talk lots." Clara watched them, her daughter bright and alive for the first time in months, and this broken man who'd somehow found a way to reach her. "Mr. Brennan." "Silas," he corrected. "If you're staying, we might as well use first names." "Silas." She took a breath. "I'll take your offer. The work arrangement. Room and board in exchange for keeping the house, if it's still open." "It's still open." "Thank you." He nodded, turning back to the foal. But Clara saw his shoulders relax just slightly, and she knew, without being able to explain it, that something had shifted. Something had begun. Mink. The first month passed quickly. Clara fell into the rhythm of ranch life, rising before dawn to start breakfast, cleaning, mending, learning the peculiarities of Silas's neglected kitchen. Joe taught her which herbs grew wild on the property and which had to be ordered from town. Silas taught her nothing directly, but she learned by watching his quiet competence, his careful routines, the way he moved through his days like a man who'd made peace with loneliness. Lily bloomed. She followed Silas everywhere, chattering about everything and nothing, asking questions. He answered with surprising patience. She named the barn cats. She learned to gather eggs without frightening the chickens. She sat on the corral fence for hours, watching the horses run. "She's attached to you," Clara said one evening, watching through the kitchen window as Silas showed Lily how to brush Buttercup's coat. "Kids get attached easy." Joe was chopping vegetables beside her, his old hands still nimble. "It's the adults who build walls." "You think he's built walls?" "I think he's built a fortress. 6 years of stone and mortar, all to keep the herding out." Joe set down his knife. "But that little girl of yours. She's finding the cracks, getting through. He don't know what to do about it." "Is that good or bad?" "Depends on what happens next." What happened next was Marcus Whitmore. He rode into Silver Creek on a cold February morning, 3 weeks after Clara had decided to stay. She didn't see him arrive, but she heard about it from Maggie O'Brien, the boarding house owner who'd become her closest friend in town, who burst into the general store where Clara was buying flour with a face tight with warning. "There's a man asking about you. Well-dressed Eastern accent. Says he's your brother-in-law." Clara's blood went cold. "Marcus. He's at my place right now talking to the sheriff. Says you disappeared with his niece, says you might be unstable, says he's just trying to bring you home safe." "He's lying. I figured as much. The way he tells it is too smooth, too practiced." Maggie gripped Clara's arm. "You need to get back to Silas's place. Now. Tell him what's happening. That man's got money and connections and a story that sounds real convincing if you don't know better." Clara ran. She was breathless by the time she reached the ranch, her lungs burning in the cold air. Silas was in the paddock working with a young horse, but he stopped the moment he saw her face. "What happened?" She told him. Everything. Marcus's interest in her even before Thomas died. The way he'd looked at her at the funeral, not with grief, but with calculation. The discovery that Thomas had left everything to Lily in a trust that Marcus couldn't touch unless he became her guardian. The threats that had driven Clara to flee in the first place. "He wants the money." she finished, her voice shaking. Thomas left nearly $5,000 for Lily's future. Marcus has gambling debts. He's desperate. And if he convinces a judge that I'm unfit, he won't. You don't know that. I'm a widow living in a single man's house. I have no income, no family, no references. All he has to do is point at me and say, "Look at how she's living." And, Clara, Silas's voice cut through her panic. He won't. Because you're not going to be a widow living in a single man's house. She stared at him. What? Marry me. The words hung in the cold air, impossible and absurd. What? She said again. You need protection. Legal standing. A husband who owns land and has income and can look a judge in the eye and say that child is mine to protect. Silas's face was hard, determined, utterly serious. I need an heir. Someone to leave this place to when I'm gone. Your girl's already more at home here than I've ever been. It makes sense. Sense, Clara echoed. You're proposing marriage because it makes sense. I'm proposing marriage because it solves both our problems. You get safety. Lily gets a home. I get someone to leave my legacy to. Everyone wins. That's not marriages aren't supposed to be business arrangements. Mine was supposed to be love. His voice went flat. Love didn't save Martha, didn't save my son. Maybe practical will work better. Clara's mind raced. It was insane. They barely knew each other. He was offering her his name, his protection, his entire future, and all he wanted in return was an heir. All he wanted in return was not to be alone. Silas, don't answer now. Think about it, but don't take too long. He looked past her toward the road where a dust cloud suggested riders approaching. Because I reckon you're about to meet your brother-in-law, and I'd like to know if I'm introducing him to my housekeeper or my wife. Clara turned. Marcus Whitmore was coming, and she had seconds to decide what she wanted the rest of her life to look like. Clara's heart slammed against her ribs as she watched the riders approach. Two men on horseback moving at an unhurried pace that somehow felt more threatening than a gallop. She recognized Marcus immediately, the way he sat in the saddle, straight-backed and arrogant, like a man who'd never been told no in his life. Silas, her voice came out strangled. I need more time. I can't just... You don't have more time. He stepped closer, his voice dropping low. Look at me, Clara. She did. His dark eyes held hers steady and certain. I ain't asking for love. Ain't asking for anything you don't want to give. But I am asking you to trust me. Right here, right now. Can you do that? The riders were close enough now that she could see Marcus's face. That smile she'd always hated, smooth and cold like oil on water. Clara thought of Lily in the barn laughing at something Joe had said. Lily who'd finally started to heal. Lily who called this place home. Yes, she whispered. I'll marry you. Something flickered in Silas's expression. Relief maybe, or something deeper. Then go inside, find Lily, stay there until I come for you. But, trust me, remember. She went. From the kitchen window, Clara watched Silas walk out to meet the riders. He moved slowly, deliberately, positioning himself in the center of the yard like a man who owned every inch of the ground beneath his feet. Because he did. Marcus dismounted, first handing his reins to the man with him, a deputy Clara realized, recognizing the badge on his chest. Her stomach turned. Mr. Brennan, I presume. Marcus's voice carried across the yard, smooth and practiced. I'm Marcus Whitmore. I believe you have something that belongs to me. Don't believe I do. My sister-in-law, Clara Whitmore, and her daughter, my niece Lily. They went missing some weeks ago, and I've been searching everywhere. That's so. Indeed. Poor Clara hasn't been well since my brother's death. Grief does terrible things to the mind. I'm simply trying to bring her home where she can receive proper care. Silas was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was flat as winter ice. Interesting story. Here's another one. Woman shows up at my door half frozen with a dying child. I take her in because that's what decent folks do. She stays because she's got nowhere else to go. And now some fancy man rides up claiming she's crazy and needs to be taken away. He tilted his head. Which story you reckon a judge would find more believable? Marcus's smile tightened. I have documentation, affidavits from concerned neighbors, a letter from her physician in Colorado suggesting she may pose a danger to herself and her child. That right. Got documentation of my own. Marriage license. Signed this morning by Pastor Ashford in town. Clara Whitmore is Clara Brennan now. That child you're so concerned about, she's my daughter by law, and you're trespassing on my land. Clara pressed her hand to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. He'd lied. They weren't married yet, couldn't be not in the last 10 minutes. But Silas stood there, bold as brass, daring Marcus to call his bluff. Marcus's expression flickered. Just for a moment, rage broke through the polished surface. You're lying. I reckon you could ride into town and check. Pastor Ashford keeps good records. So does the county clerk. Silas stepped forward, and something in his posture made the deputy's hand drift toward his gun. But here's the thing, Mr. Whitmore. Even if I was lying, which I ain't, you'd still be trespassing. You'd still be making accusations against my wife without evidence. And you'd still be about 3 seconds from finding out what happens to men who threaten my family. Your family. Marcus spat the words. You don't even know her. I know enough. I know she walked through a blizzard for 2 days to keep her daughter alive. I know she works harder than any woman I've ever met. I know she don't sleep some nights because she's afraid of what's coming. Silas's voice dropped quiet and deadly. And I know you ain't here because you care about that little girl. You're here because of money. Thomas's money. Money that belongs to Lily, not you. Marcus's face went white. How dare you? Get off my land. This isn't over, Brennan. I have lawyers. I have connections. You'll what take me to court. Go ahead. I've got 500 acres, a clean reputation, and a wife who'll testify to exactly what kind of man you are. Silas smiled, and it was the coldest thing Clara had ever seen. You want a war, Mr. Whitmore? I've got nothing but time. The deputy shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Whitmore, maybe we should— Shut up. Marcus's voice was sharp. He stared at Silas for a long moment, calculating, assessing. Then he swung back onto his horse with jerky, angry movements. You've made an enemy today, Mr. Brennan. A powerful one. Had worse. Marcus wheeled his horse and rode away without another word. The deputy followed, casting one uncertain glance back over his shoulder. Silas stood motionless until they disappeared over the ridge. Then his shoulders dropped just slightly, and he turned toward the house. Clara met him at the door. You lied to him. Yep. We're not actually married. Not yet. He looked at her, and some of the hardness had faded from his expression. But we will be. Tomorrow morning, if you're still willing. Pastor Ashford owes me a favor. He'll keep his mouth shut until then. And if Marcus checks before tomorrow, he won't. Man like that doesn't do his own dirty work. He'll send someone, probably a lawyer, and lawyers don't travel on Sundays. Silas paused. That gives us tonight to get our story straight, and tomorrow to make it legal. After that, he can investigate all he wants. Won't matter. Clara leaned against the doorframe, suddenly exhausted. The fear was fading, replaced by something else. Gratitude, disbelief, and underneath it all, a strange flutter of something she didn't want to name. Why are you doing this? She asked quietly. The truth, not the practical reasons, the real reason. Silas was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. Because I watched my wife die and couldn't do a damn thing to stop it. Because I buried my son before he ever had a name. Because for 6 years I've been walking around like a ghost, just waiting for my turn to lie down and stop breathing. He met her eyes. And then you showed up. You and that little girl. And something in me woke up. Something I thought was dead. Silas. I ain't asking for love, he said again. But I am asking for a chance. A chance to be something other than a dead man walking. A chance to have a family again, even if it's not the one I planned. He swallowed hard. That's the truth. You can take it or leave it. Clara thought about Thomas. Sweet, gentle Thomas, who'd loved her with everything he had. Who'd died in a dark mine shaft while she sat at home completely unaware that her world was ending. She thought about the months after, the grief, the fear, the desperate bone-deep loneliness of being completely alone in a world that didn't care whether she lived or died. And she thought about Silas. This scarred, silent man who'd carried her through a blizzard, who'd sat up all night holding her daughter's hand, who was offering her everything he had in exchange for nothing more than a chance. "Tomorrow morning," she said softly, "I'll be ready." Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. "Get some rest. You'll need it." He walked past her toward the barn, and Clara watched him go, her heart full of emotions she couldn't sort out. Behind her, Lily's voice piped up from the kitchen. "Mama, is the mean man gone?" Clara turned to find her daughter standing in the doorway, Joe hovering protectively behind her. "Yes, baby. He's gone." "Is he coming back?" Clara knelt down and pulled Lily into her arms. "Maybe. But it doesn't matter. Mr. Silas is going to protect us. He promised." Lily nodded solemnly. "I know. He promised me too. He said nobody's ever going to take me away from you. He said he'd fight 100 bad men if he had to." "Did he now?" "Uh-huh. He said I'm his girl now, just like Copper is his horse. And he takes real good care of his horses." Lily smiled bright and trusting. "I like being his girl, Mama. Is that okay?" Clara's throat closed up. She hugged her daughter tighter, blinking back tears. "Yeah, baby. That's okay. That's more than okay." The wedding took place the next morning in Pastor Ashford's small parlor, with Joe and Maggie O'Brien as witnesses. Clara wore her only good dress, a dark blue calico that had seen better days, but was at least clean. Silas wore his Sunday clothes, black and severe, his scarred face set in an expression of grim determination. It should have felt like a business transaction. It should have felt cold and practical, two strangers signing papers for mutual convenience. It didn't. When Pastor Ashford asked if Silas took Clara to be his lawfully wedded wife, something changed in his voice. Something softened. "I do." 2 words. Simple. Certain. And underneath them, a promise that had nothing to do with legal documents. When it was Clara's turn, she found herself looking into his dark eyes and seeing not a stranger, not a business arrangement, but a man. A man who'd lost everything and still found it in himself to offer everything again. "I do." Pastor Ashford pronounced them husband and wife. There was an awkward moment. They hadn't discussed what would happen next, but Silas solved it by leaning down and pressing his lips to her forehead. Brief, gentle, almost reverent. "Welcome to the family, Mrs. Brennan." Maggie dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Joe clapped Silas on the shoulder with a grin that suggested he'd been waiting 6 years for this moment. And Lily, who'd been squirming impatiently throughout the short ceremony, launched herself at Silas's legs. "Does this mean you're my papa now? For real?" Silas looked down at her, and Clara saw the walls crack. Just a little. Just enough. "If you want me to be." "I do," Lily declared. "I really, really do." He picked her up, settling her on his hip, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like he'd been doing it for years instead of weeks. "Then that's what I am. For real." Clara watched them together, her daughter in her new husband's arms, both of them smiling like the world had just rearranged itself into something bearable, and felt something shift in her own chest. Hope, maybe. Or something even more dangerous. The first week of marriage was strange and careful. Silas moved his things into the house, into a small room down the hall from Clara's, not into her bedroom. They ate meals together, worked alongside each other, fell into a rhythm that was almost domestic. But there were boundaries. Unspoken lines neither of them crossed. Silas never touched her, except in passing. Clara never asked him to. They were partners, allies, something that might eventually become friends. But they weren't lovers, weren't even close. It should have been enough. It was more than Clara had dared hope for, more than she deserved. But at night, lying alone in her narrow bed, she found herself thinking about the way he'd kissed her forehead, the gentleness in his voice when he spoke to Lily, the way his hands looked when he worked strong and capable and careful. She pushed the thoughts away. This was a business arrangement, nothing more. Marcus's lawyer arrived on Thursday. Clara was in the kitchen when she heard the horse approach. Her hands froze over the bread dough, her heart immediately racing. But Silas was already moving, already positioning himself between the door and whatever threat was coming. "Stay here," he said, his voice calm. "I'll handle it." "Silas, trust me." The lawyer was a thin man with wire-rimmed spectacles and a folder full of papers. He introduced himself as Harold Thornton, attorney at law representing the interests of Mr. Marcus Whitmore in the matter of guardianship for one Lily Whitmore. "That would be Lily Brennan," Silas corrected. "My daughter." Thornton's eyebrows rose. "Your daughter?" "Yes, I heard about the marriage. Quite sudden, wasn't it?" "Don't see how that's any of your business." "It becomes my business when the marriage appears to be a transparent attempt to circumvent my client's legitimate guardianship claim." Thornton opened his folder. "I have here sworn statements from 3 residents of the mining settlement in Colorado, all testifying that Mrs. Brennan, Mrs. Whitmore, as she was then, exhibited signs of mental instability following her husband's death." "What kind of signs?" "Crying, refusing to eat, speaking to her deceased husband as if he were still present." Thornton's voice was dry. "Classic symptoms of a mind overwhelmed by grief." "Also known as mourning," Silas said flatly. "Pretty sure that's normal when your husband dies." "Perhaps, but my client is concerned that Mrs. Brennan's judgment may be impaired, that she may not be capable of providing proper care for the child. He's simply trying to ensure his niece's well-being. By taking her away from her mother. By providing her with a stable home environment. Mr. Whitmore is a man of means. He can offer the child opportunities that a remote Montana ranch simply cannot." Silas stepped closer to the lawyer, and Clara saw Thornton take an involuntary step back. "Let me tell you what I see, Mr. Thornton. I see a man who showed no interest in that little girl until he found out she stands to inherit money. I see a man who let his sister-in-law and niece wander homeless for months without lifting a finger to help. And I see a man who's trying to use the law to steal a child from her mother." His voice dropped. "That how you want to spend your career, helping men like that?" Thornton's jaw tightened. "My client's motivations are not my concern. The law is my concern. And the law says he has standing to petition for custody." "Then let him petition. We'll see him in court." "Very well." Thornton closed his folder. "You'll receive official notice within the week. The hearing will be scheduled as soon as possible. I suggest you retain counsel, Mr. Brennan. You're going to need it." He turned and walked back to his horse, leaving Silas standing in the yard with his fists clenched at his sides. Clara emerged from the house, her face pale. "He's really going through with it. The court case." "Looks like." "Silas, what if we lose? What if the judge believes him? I can't lose Lily. I can't." "You won't." He turned to face her, and his expression was fierce. "I don't care what lawyers he brings. I don't care what lies he tells. That girl is ours. You hear me? Ours. And no one is taking her away." Clara wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that everything would be all right, but she'd learned the hard way that wanting and having were very different things. The next 2 weeks were a blur of preparation. Silas hired a lawyer from Helena, a woman named Margaret Hale, who'd built her reputation defending settlers against railroad companies. She was sharp-shrewd and utterly unintimidated by Marcus Whitmore's money. "Your case is strong," she told them during her first visit. "You're married. You own property. The child is thriving. But we need more than that. We need to prove that Marcus Whitmore is unfit, that his interest in Lily is financial, not familial. How do we prove that? Clara asked. We dig. Everyone has secrets, Mrs. Brennan. Your brother-in-law is no exception. The digging proved fruitful. Margaret's investigators found gambling debts, creditors, rumors of embezzlement from the mining company Marcus worked for. Nothing conclusive, but enough to raise questions. More importantly, they found witnesses. People who'd known Marcus in Colorado. People who'd seen how he treated his brother, how he'd looked at Clara, how he'd shown no interest in Lily until the money came into play. We can win this, Margaret said 2 days before the hearing. But it won't be easy. Whitmore's lawyer is good. He'll attack your character, Mrs. Brennan. He'll question the timing of your marriage. He'll try to paint Mr. Brennan as an opportunist who saw a vulnerable woman and took advantage. Let him try, Silas growled. I intend to. But you need to be prepared, both of you. This is going to be ugly. She was right. The hearing took place in the Territorial Courthouse in Helena, a 2-story brick building that smelled of tobacco and old paper. Marcus was already there when they arrived, seated at a polished table with Thornton and a stack of documents. He looked confident, smug, like a man who'd already won. Clara's stomach churned. She reached for Silas's hand without thinking, and he took it, squeezed once, solid and warm and steady. Whatever happens, he murmured, we face it together. The judge was an older man with a gray beard and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He listened impassively as Thornton presented Marcus's case. The concerned uncle, the unstable mother, the hasty marriage designed to circumvent legitimate family interests. Then it was Margaret's turn. She was magnificent. She demolished Marcus's witnesses one by one, exposing their tenuous connections to the case, their likely financial incentives. She presented evidence of his gambling debts, his creditors, the rumors from Colorado. Mr. Whitmore claims to be acting in the child's best interest, Margaret said, her voice ringing through the courtroom. But where was this concern when Clara Whitmore and her daughter were homeless? Where was this family devotion when a 5-year-old child was walking through blizzards half-starved and fever-ridden? Mr. Whitmore knew where they were. He did nothing. Objection, Thornton said. Speculation. Sustained. The judge looked at Margaret. Stick to the facts, counselor. The facts, Your Honor, are these. Lily Brennan is healthy, happy, and thriving in her current home. She has a mother who loves her and a stepfather who has already proven he will do anything to protect her. Mr. Whitmore offers nothing but money. Money that evidence suggests he intends to use for his own purposes rather than the child's benefit. The judge was quiet for a long moment, his eyes moving between Marcus and Clara. I've heard enough arguments, he said finally. I'd like to hear from the principals. Mrs. Brennan, please take the stand. Clara's legs trembled as she walked to the witness chair. She could feel Marcus's eyes on her, cold and calculating. Mrs. Brennan, the judge's voice was not unkind. Tell me about your daughter. Tell me about your life now and what you hope for her future. Clara took a breath, and she told him. She told him about Thomas, his kindness, his dreams, his death. She told him about the months after the desperation, the fear. She told him about the blizzard, about Silas, about a scarred rancher who'd carried her through the snow and given her back her life. Lily is everything to me, she finished, her voice breaking. She's the reason I kept walking when I wanted to give up. She's the reason I'm still here. And she's happy now. Truly happy. She has a home, a family, people who love her. Please don't take that away from her. Please. The judge was silent. Then he turned to Silas. Mr. Brennan, you married a woman you'd known for a matter of weeks. A woman who arrived on your doorstep with nothing. Why? Silas stood slowly, his face unreadable. Because she needed help. Because her daughter needed help. And because... He stopped, swallowed hard. Because I lost my wife and son 6 years ago, and I've been dead inside ever since. Clara and Lily brought me back to life. They gave me a reason to keep going, That's worth more than money, Your Honor. That's worth everything I have." The courtroom was silent. Marcus shot to his feet. "This is absurd. He's clearly manipulated this woman for his own—" "Sit down, Mr. Whitmore." The judge's voice was sharp. "I've heard enough from you." He studied the papers in front of him for a long moment. Then he looked up. "It's clear to this court that Mr. Whitmore's interest in the child is primarily financial. It's equally clear that Lily Brennan is in a loving, stable home with parents who are devoted to her welfare. I see no grounds for removing her from that home." Clara's heart stopped. "However," the judge continued, "I am concerned about the circumstances of this marriage. The timing is suspicious. The motives are unclear." "Your Honor," Margaret began, "let me finish, Counselor. I'm not ruling in Mr. Whitmore's favor, but I'm also not entirely satisfied that this marriage is genuine. Therefore, I'm going to delay my final ruling for 60 days. During that time, the child remains with Mr. and Mrs. Brennan. I will appoint a representative to visit the home and assess the family situation. If at the end of 60 days, I'm satisfied that this is a legitimate family unit, I will rule in the Brennans' favor permanently. If not," he looked at Marcus, "we'll revisit the matter." He banged his gavel. "Court is adjourned." Outside the courthouse, Clara leaned against the wall, her legs shaking. They hadn't won, not completely, but they hadn't lost either. 60 days, Silas said quietly. "We can work with that. He's going to send someone to watch us, to see if our marriage is real. Then we make it real." Clara looked up at him. "What do you mean?" Silas's jaw was tight, but his eyes were gentle. "I mean we stop pretending this is just a business arrangement. I mean we act like husband and wife, sleep in the same room, eat at the same table, be a family, not just people living under the same roof." "Silas, I don't know if I can. I ain't asking for anything you're not ready to give." He took her hands, his calloused fingers warm against her cold skin. "But I am asking you to try. To let me in just a little. To see if, maybe this could be something more than just survival." Clara thought about the last 2 months. The way Silas had fought for her, provided for her, protected her, without ever asking for anything in return. The way he looked at Lily with so much love, it hurt to watch. The way he made her feel safe in a world that had proven over and over how unsafe it could be. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll try." Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. "That's all I ask." They rode home in silence, but it was a different kind of silence now, charged with possibility, heavy with hope. Lily was waiting for them on the porch, bouncing with impatience. "Did we win? Did the judge say I get to stay?" Silas swung down from the wagon and lifted her into his arms. "You get to stay, little one, forever. Forever, forever. Forever and beyond." Lily threw her arms around his neck, laughing. Clara watched them, her heart full to bursting. They hadn't won yet. The battle wasn't over. But for the first time since Thomas died, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be all right. That night, Silas moved his things into her bedroom. He slept on a pallet on the floor, insisting she keep the bed, but he was there. Present. Close. In the darkness, Clara listened to his breathing and wondered what the next 60 days would bring. She didn't know yet that they would bring everything. The court's representative arrived on a Tuesday morning 3 weeks into the 60-day period. Her name was Mrs. Adelaide Crane, a severe woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and eyes that seemed to catalog everything they touched. Clara's hands trembled as she poured coffee. "Please sit down, Mrs. Crane. Can I get you anything breakfast, perhaps?" "Coffee is sufficient." Mrs. Crane settled into a chair at the kitchen table, her gaze sweeping the room. "I prefer to observe families in their natural state, Mrs. Brennan. Please, go about your normal routine." Normal. As if anything about this situation was normal. Silas came in from the barn stomping snow from his boots. He'd been up since before dawn, same as always, but Clara noticed he'd taken extra care with his appearance. Clean shirt, hair combed. The effort touched her more than she wanted to admit. "Mrs. Crane." He nodded politely. "Welcome to our home." "Mr. Brennan, I trust you understand why I'm here. To make sure we're a real family, not just putting on a show." "Precisely." Mrs. Crane's pen scratched against her notebook. "I'll be staying in the area for the next week, visiting at various times, observing. I hope that won't be an inconvenience." "You're welcome anytime." Lily burst through the back door, cheeks flushed from the cold, Joe trailing behind her. "Papa Copper learned a new trick. He can bow now just like a fancy horse. Joe showed me how to teach him." She skidded to a halt when she saw the stranger at the table. "Who's that?" "Lily." Clara's voice carried a gentle warning. "This is Mrs. Crane. She's visiting us for a little while. Can you say hello?" Lily studied the woman with the unfiltered assessment only children possess. "Hello. Are you nice or mean?" "Lily." Clara's face flushed, but Mrs. Crane's lips twitched the first crack in her severe facade. "I try to be nice, young lady, but I'm also very honest. Do you think you can handle that?" Lily considered this seriously. "Papa's honest too. He said honesty is the most important thing even when it's hard. He said that's why Mama married him, because he always tells the truth." Mrs. Crane's eyebrows rose. She looked at Silas, then at Clara, her pen moving across the page. "Is that so?" "Uh-huh. And he said I'm his girl now forever and beyond. That's longer than forever, you know. It's a special promise." Clara's throat tightened. She hadn't known Silas had said that. Hadn't known how deeply Lily had absorbed his words. "Why don't you go wash up for breakfast, baby?" Clara managed. "I made your favorite." "Flapjacks. Flapjacks." Lily whooped and ran for the stairs, her earlier caution forgotten. Mrs. Crane watched her go, something unreadable in her expression. "She seems happy." "She is happy." Silas's voice was firm. "Happier than she's been in a long time. That's what matters, isn't it? The child's welfare. It's one consideration among many." Mrs. Crane turned to Clara. "I'd like to speak with you privately, Mrs. Brennan. Perhaps after breakfast." Clara's stomach dropped, but she nodded. "Of course." The private conversation took place in the parlor with the door closed and Silas pacing the kitchen like a caged wolf. "Tell me about your marriage, Mrs. Brennan." Mrs. Crane's voice was neutral, but her eyes were sharp. "And please be honest. I've been doing this work for 15 years. I can tell when someone is lying." Clara twisted her hands in her lap. "It's not a conventional marriage. I won't pretend it is. Silas offered me protection when I had nowhere else to turn. He offered Lily a home, a father, a chance at stability. And I accepted because—" She stopped, took a breath. "Because I was desperate. Because Marcus Whitmore would have taken my daughter if I hadn't. Because Silas was the first person in months who treated me like a human being instead of a burden. So it was a marriage of convenience. It was a marriage of survival." Clara's chin lifted. "But that doesn't mean it's not real. Silas has been more of a husband to me in 2 months than some men are in a lifetime. He provides for us. He protects us. He loves Lily like she's his own blood. Isn't that what marriage is supposed to be?" Mrs. Crane was quiet for a long moment. "And what about love, Mrs. Brennan? The romantic kind. The kind that makes a marriage more than just an arrangement." Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I loved my first husband. Loved him with everything I had. And then he died, and I thought that part of me died with him." She paused, choosing her words carefully. Silas woke something up. Something I thought was gone forever. I don't know if it's love yet, but it could be. Given time, it could be. And does he feel the same? You'd have to ask him." Mrs. Crane made a note. "I intend to." Her conversation with Silas lasted even longer. Clara waited in the kitchen, unable to eat, unable to sit still. Lily had gone out to the barn with Joe, blissfully unaware of the weight hanging over all of them. When the parlor door finally opened, Silas's face was unreadable. "She wants to stay for dinner," he said quietly. "Wants to see how we are as a family." "What did you tell her?" "The truth." He moved closer, his voice dropping. "Told her I married you because you needed help, and I could give it. Told her I didn't expect to feel anything beyond obligation. Told her I was wrong." Clara's heart stuttered. Wrong about what? About not feeling anything. His dark eyes held hers. "Clara, I'm not good with words. Never have been. But these past weeks, having you here, watching you with Lily, seeing this house come alive again." He stopped, swallowed hard. "I don't know what to call it, but it's more than convenience, more than arrangement. It's something I thought I'd never have again." The kitchen suddenly felt very small, very warm. "Silas, you don't have to say anything back. I'm not asking for that. I just wanted you to know." He stepped away, his expression closing off again. "Whatever you decide, whatever you feel, I'll respect it. But I'm done pretending I don't care, because I do. More than I should." He walked out to the barn, leaving Clara standing alone with her racing heart and 1,000 tangled emotions. Dinner that night was a test Clara hadn't studied for. Mrs. Crane watched everything. The way Clara served the food. The way Silas bowed his head for grace. The way Lily chattered between bites, her small feet swinging beneath the table. "Papa, tell Mrs. Crane about Thunder. Tell her about the time he jumped the fence and you had to chase him all the way to Miller's farm." Silas's mouth twitched. "Reckon that's not the kind of story Mrs. Crane wants to hear, little one." "Actually," Mrs. Crane said, "I'd be very interested." So Silas told the story, haltingly at first, then with more animation as Lily interrupted with her own embellishments. Clara watched, mesmerized by this side of him, the storyteller, the father, the man who could make a 5-year-old laugh until she nearly fell off her chair. "And then what happened?" Lily demanded. "Then Thunder decided he'd had enough adventure for one day and walked himself right back into the barn like nothing happened. Horses are silly. Some of them. Others are smart. Copper's smart. Copper's the smartest horse in the whole world." Lily turned to Mrs. Crane with absolute certainty. "Papa's teaching me to train him. He says by summer I'll be able to ride him all by myself." "That's quite a responsibility for a young lady." "I know, but Papa says I'm ready. He says I'm braver than most grown-ups." She frowned. "Is that true? Am I braver than most grown-ups?" Silas reached over and ruffled her hair. "You walked through a blizzard without crying. I'd say that's pretty brave." "I did cry a little, but only on the inside. Inside crying doesn't count." "That's what I thought too." Clara caught Mrs. Crane's eye and saw something shift in the older woman's expression, something that looked almost like approval. After dinner, while Clara washed dishes and Silas helped Lily with her letters, Mrs. Crane approached her quietly. "I've seen enough for today, Mrs. Brennan. I'll return later this week at a different time. But I want you to know—" She paused, her severe face softening. "Whatever this marriage started, as it's become something real. I can see it in the way your husband looks at you, the way your daughter clings to him, the way this house feels like a home." Clara's hands stilled in the soapy water. "Does that mean—" "It means I'll be making a favorable report to the judge. It means I think you found something precious here, Mrs. Brennan. Something worth fighting for." The relief that flooded through Clara was so intense she had to grip the edge of the sink. Thank you so much. Don't thank me. Thank that man in there." Mrs. Crane nodded toward the parlor where Silas was patiently helping Lily sound out words. "He's rare, you know. A man who can love a child not his own as fiercely as his own blood. Hold on to him." "I intend to." Mrs. Crane left with a promise to return Thursday. Clara closed the door behind her and leaned against it, her legs weak with relief. It wasn't over. Not yet. But they were winning. She found Silas on the porch later that night after Lily was asleep. He stood with his back to the door, staring out at the snow-covered landscape, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. "Mrs. Crane's going to recommend in our favor." "I heard." He didn't turn around. "That's good." "It's more than good. It's—" Clara stepped closer. "Silas, it's everything. We might actually win this. We will win this." He turned then, and his expression was fierce. "I won't let Marcus take her. Won't let anyone take either of you. Not now. Not ever." The intensity in his voice made Clara's breath catch. "What you said earlier, in the kitchen. I meant every word. I know you did." She stepped closer still, until she could feel the warmth radiating from his body despite the cold. "I've been thinking about it all day. About what you said. About what I feel. And I'm terrified." Her voice came out barely a whisper. "Terrified of caring again. Terrified of losing again. But I'm more terrified of pushing you away and spending the rest of my life wondering what could have been." Silas was very still. "What are you saying, Clara?" "I'm saying—" She took a shaky breath. "I'm saying I want this to be real. Not just for the judge, not just for Lily. For us. I want to try. Really try." Something shifted in his expression. Something that looked like hope. "You're sure? Because I can't go back, Clara. If we do this, if we open that door, I can't close it again. I'm not strong enough." "Neither am I." She reached up and touched his face, her fingers tracing the scar that ran down his cheek. "But maybe that's okay. Maybe we don't need to be strong alone. Maybe we can be strong together." He caught her hand, pressed his lips to her palm. "I've been dead for 6 years," he said roughly. "Dead and buried and just going through the motions. Then you showed up half frozen carrying your daughter, and something in me woke up. Something I thought was gone forever. I know, I felt the same thing. Still feel it every time you look at me. Clara, kiss me." The words came out before she could stop them. "Really kiss me. Not on the forehead, not politely. Kiss me like you mean it." He didn't hesitate. His mouth found hers with a hunger that stole her breath. She'd expected gentleness. Silas was always so careful, so controlled, but there was nothing gentle about this. It was desperate searching, 6 years of loneliness pouring out in a single moment. Clara kissed him back with equal fervor, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. The cold disappeared. The fear disappeared. There was nothing but this, his arms around her, his heart pounding against hers, the taste of him on her lips. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. "That," Silas said roughly, "is what I meant. Every time I look at you. Every time I hear your voice. That." Clara laughed shakily. "Why didn't you kiss me like that before?" "Because I was afraid you'd run. Afraid I'd scare you off." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I've already lost one wife. I couldn't bear to lose another. You won't lose me." She cupped his face in her hands. "I'm not going anywhere. Not now. Not ever. Promise." "I promise. Forever and beyond." Something wet glinted on his scarred cheek, and Clara realized with shock that Silas Brennan was crying. Silent tears quickly wiped away, but tears nonetheless. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. "That's not for you to decide." Clara. "Come to bed." The words slipped out, and her face flamed, but she didn't take them back. "Not like that. Not yet. But come to bed with me. Sleep beside me, not on the floor. Be my husband for real, in all the ways that matter." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "All right." That night, for the first time since their wedding, they shared a bed. Silas held her close, his arms wrapped around her like he was afraid she'd disappear. Clara listened to his heartbeat and felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Peace. The days that followed were different, charged with a new energy. Clara found herself touching Silas without thinking, a hand on his arm, fingers brushing his as she passed him coffee. He responded in kind, his palm warm on the small of her back, his lips grazing her temple when he thought no one was watching. Joe noticed. Of course, Joe noticed. "About time," he muttered to Clara one morning, a grin splitting his weathered face. "Been watching that man mope around for 6 years. Nice to see him smile again." He smiles when he thinks nobody's looking, usually when you walk into a room. Clara's face warmed, but she couldn't help smiling herself. Mrs. Crane returned twice more. Each visit was shorter, more perfunctory. By the third, she was practically cheerful. "I've never seen a family come together so quickly," she admitted. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." "We're just being ourselves," Clara said honestly. "Yes, and that's exactly what makes it work." The final day of the 60-day period arrived with deceptive calm. Clara woke to find Silas already dressed, pacing the bedroom with barely contained tension. "The hearing's at 2, he said. "Margaret says we should be there by 1. Make a good impression." "We'll make a good impression." Clara climbed out of bed and crossed to him, placing her hands on his chest. "Silas, look at me." He did. His dark eyes were wild with fear. "What if it's not enough? What if the judge decides Marcus's money matters more than—" "It won't happen. You don't know that." "No, but I believe it, and I need you to believe it too." She stretched up and kissed him soft and sure. "We've done everything right. We've built something real. Today we show the judge what that looks like." Silas closed his eyes, his forehead dropping to hers. "I can't lose her. Can't lose either of you. Not now. You won't. Promise. Forever and beyond." The courthouse in Helena was crowded when they arrived. Word had spread about the case, the rancher, the widow, the wealthy uncle fighting for custody. People Clara had never met stared as they walked past, whispering behind their hands. She kept her chin up, kept her hand in Silas's, kept walking. Margaret met them at the door, her expression tense but hopeful. "Mrs. Crane's report is favorable. Very favorable. I think we've got this, but Marcus brought in a new lawyer from back east. Big city type. We need to be ready for anything." "We're ready," Silas said. The courtroom felt smaller than before. More oppressive. Marcus was already seated, his new lawyer, a silver-haired man with predatory eyes, leaning close to whisper instructions. Judge Harrison took his seat, and the room fell silent. "We are here to issue a final ruling in the matter of custody for Lily Brennan, formerly Lily Whitmore." He shuffled papers. "I have reviewed Mrs. Crane's reports, the testimony from the previous hearing, and the supplemental evidence submitted by both parties. Is there anything either side wishes to add before I deliver my decision?" Marcus's lawyer stood smoothly. "Your Honor, if I may, we have new evidence that calls into question the legitimacy of the Brennans' marriage." Clara's blood went cold. "What evidence?" Judge Harrison's voice was sharp. "We have located a witness, a former resident of the mining settlement in Colorado, who claims that Mrs. Brennan was involved in an inappropriate relationship with her brother-in-law before her husband's death." "That's a lie." Clara shot to her feet. "I never." "Order." The judge's gavel cracked. "Mrs. Brennan, sit down. Counselor, this is highly irregular. Why wasn't this evidence presented earlier?" "The witness only came forward recently, Your Honor. She was afraid of retaliation." "Convenient," Margaret muttered. The judge's eyes narrowed. "Bring in this witness." The woman who entered the courtroom was vaguely familiar, one of the miners' wives from Colorado. Clara thought. She'd never spoken to her directly, had only seen her in passing at the company store. "State your name for the record." "Beatrice Fowler." "And what is your testimony, Mrs. Fowler?" The woman's eyes darted to Marcus, then away. "I seen them together. Mrs. Whitmore and Mr. Marcus Whitmore. Before Mr. Thomas died. They was close. Too close if you take my meaning." "That is not true." Clara's voice shook with rage. "I never touched that man. I avoided him at every opportunity." "Mrs. Brennan, you will have a chance to respond." Judge Harrison turned back to the witness. "Can you provide specifics? Mrs. Fowler, dates, locations, other witnesses." The woman hesitated. "Well, I seen them talking, outside the company office, more than once." "Talking." The judge's voice was flat. "Is that the extent of your evidence?" "They was standing close, and he was always looking at her. Everyone noticed." "So your testimony is that the defendant was seen talking to her brother-in-law and that he looked at her." Judge Harrison removed his spectacles and rubbed his eyes. "Mr. Thornton, is this really the best you can do?" The silver-haired lawyer spread his hands. "Your Honor, the implication is clear." "The implication is meaningless without substantive evidence." The judge's voice cracked like a whip. "I will not destroy a family based on gossip and innuendo. Is there anything else?" Silence. "Then I am prepared to deliver my ruling." He looked directly at Clara and Silas. "It is the judgment of this court that Lily Brennan shall remain in the custody of her mother, Clara Brennan, and her stepfather, Silas Brennan. All claims by Marcus Whitmore are hereby dismissed, and Mr. Whitmore is ordered to have no contact with the child unless explicitly permitted by her parents." Relief crashed over Clara like a wave. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "I am referring this matter to the territorial prosecutor for investigation into potential perjury and witness tampering." Marcus's face went white. "Your Honor." "We're done here, Mr. Whitmore. I suggest you retain criminal counsel." The gavel fell. Clara turned to Silas, tears streaming down her face. "We won. We actually won." He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "Told you. Forever and beyond. Ain't nothing breaking this family apart." Outside the courthouse, Lily was waiting with Joe and Maggie. She took one look at their faces and launched herself at Silas with a shriek of joy. "We won! We won, didn't we? I can stay forever. Forever and beyond, little one." Silas swung her up onto his shoulders. "Forever and beyond." They walked out into the late afternoon sun, a rancher, a widow, and a little girl who'd found each other in the snow and somehow become a family. Behind them, Marcus Whitmore stood alone on the courthouse steps, watching his fortune slip away. But Clara didn't look back. She was too busy looking forward. The ride home from Helena felt different than any journey Clara had ever taken. The weight she'd carried for months, years, maybe had finally lifted. Lily sat between them on the wagon seat, chattering about everything and nothing, her small hand gripping Silas's coat like she'd never let go. "Papa, can we have cake when we get home? Mama makes the best cake. Can we please?" "Reckon we could manage that." Silas's voice was gruff, but Clara caught the smile tugging at his lips. "Special occasion deserves something special." "It's the most special occasion ever. We're a real family now. The judge said so." Clara reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand. "We were always a real family, baby. The judge just made it official." "That's what I said." Lily nodded sagely. "Papa knew. He told me we were forever and beyond, even before the judge said anything." Silas met Clara's eyes over their daughter's head. In his gaze, she saw everything they hadn't said out loud yet, everything they were still learning how to feel. "Your papa's a smart man," Clara said softly. "The smartest." Lily agreed. "Except maybe Joe. Joe knows everything about horses." The laughter that bubbled up from Clara's chest felt foreign. How long had it been since she'd laughed like this? Really laughed without fear or desperation lurking underneath? She couldn't remember. They arrived home as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Joe met them in the yard, his weathered face creasing with relief when he saw their expressions. "Good news, I take it." "The best." Silas swung down from the wagon and helped Clara and Lily descend. Judge threw out Marcus's case, referred him for criminal investigation. "Well, I'll be damned." Joe's grin spread wide. "Pardon my language, little miss." "That's okay." Lily was already running toward the barn. "I'm going to tell Copper. He'll be so happy." The adults watched her go, and something in the moment felt sacred, complete. "She's a different child than the one you brought in from that blizzard," Joe said quietly. "Happy. Whole." "We all are." Clara's voice caught. "Thanks to you. All of you." "Don't thank me. I just work here." But Joe's eyes were suspiciously bright as he turned away. "I'll get the horses settled. You folks go on inside. Celebrate." They celebrated with cake just as Lily requested. Clara baked it while Silas helped their daughter set the table with the good china dishes that hadn't been used in 6 years, according to Joe. Dishes that had belonged to Martha. "Is it okay?" Clara asked quietly, watching Silas handle the delicate plates. "Using these? More than okay." His voice was rough. "Martha would have liked you, Clara. Would have been glad her things are being used again instead of collecting dust." "You really believe that?" "I know it." He set down the last plate and turned to face her. She wasn't the jealous type. She'd want me happy. Want this house full of life again. He paused. "Took me 6 years to understand that. Took you showing up to make me see it." Clara crossed to him and wrapped her arms around his waist, pressing her cheek to his chest. "I'm glad I showed up." "So am I." His arms came around her solid and warm. "So am I." Lily burst into the kitchen, breaking the moment with her usual chaos. "The table's ready. Can we eat now? I'm starving." "You're always starving," Silas said, but he was smiling. "Wash your hands first." "Already did." "Show me." Lily presented her palms with exaggerated seriousness. Silas inspected them, turned them over, inspected the backs. "Passable. Go sit down." She scampered to her seat, and Clara marveled again at how natural this had become. How right. They ate together as a family, talked and laughed and argued about whether horses or dogs made better companions. Lily insisted on seconds of everything, and Silas let her, claiming growing girls needed fuel. "You're spoiling her," Clara said, but there was no heat in it. "That's my job." He ruffled Lily's hair. "Somebody's got to." After dinner, they sat in the parlor, another room that had been closed off for years now, warm with firelight and the sound of Lily reading aloud from her primer. Her voice was hesitant, sounding out unfamiliar words, but she was learning fast. "The cat sat on the mat." She looked up triumphantly. "I did it, the whole sentence. Good job, baby." Clara hugged her close. "I'm so proud of you." "Papa, did you hear I read the whole thing?" "Heard every word." Silas's voice was thick. "You're the smartest girl in Montana Territory." "Maybe the whole world." "Maybe so." Later, after Lily was asleep and the house had settled into quiet, Clara found Silas on the porch. He stood with his back to her, looking out at the stars. "Can't sleep." "Don't want to." He turned, and the moonlight caught the tears on his cheeks. "Afraid I'll wake up and this'll all be a dream." Clara crossed to him and took his hands. "It's not a dream. We're here. We're real. And we're not going anywhere." "I know." He pulled her close. "I know. It's just, I spent so long believing I'd never have this again. Never wanted it again. And now I can't imagine living without it. Without you. Without Lily." His voice broke. "You saved me, Clara. You and that little girl. Saved me from myself." Clara reached up and wiped the tears from his face. "We saved each other. That's what families do." Family. He tested the word like it was new. Like he was learning it all over again. Yeah, I guess that's what we are. Not guess. No. She pulled his head down and kissed him soft and sure. We're a family, Silas Brennan. Forever and beyond. He kissed her back, and the night wrapped around them like a blessing. The weeks that followed were the happiest Clara had known since Thomas died. Maybe the happiest ever, different from her first marriage, less innocent, but deeper tempered by loss into something stronger. She and Silas grew closer every day. Not just physically, though, that too, nights spent learning each other's bodies, mapping scars and secrets, finding joy in places they'd thought were dead. But emotionally as well. He told her about Martha, really told her, sharing memories he'd kept locked away for years. And Clara told him about Thomas, the good times, the hard times, the dreams they'd had that would never come true. You think they'd approve? Silas asked one night, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. Thomas and Martha, us together. I think they'd be glad we found each other. Clara shifted closer, pressing a kiss to his chest. I think they'd want us happy. Even though it's different, even though we're not replacing them. We're not replacing anyone. She propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. What we have is its own thing. New and separate and ours. That doesn't take anything away from what came before. Silas was quiet for a long moment. I felt guilty, he admitted finally. Those first weeks. Every time I looked at you, every time I wanted you, I felt like I was betraying her memory. And now I think she'd kick my ass for waiting so long to let myself feel again. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Martha was practical that way. No patience for self-pity. Clara laughed softly. I would have liked her. She would have loved you. He pulled her down for a kiss. And Lily. God, she would have adored Lily. Spring came slowly to Montana, the snow retreating inch by inch, revealing patches of brown earth and the first stubborn shoots of green. Lily celebrated each new sign of the season with unbridled enthusiasm, dragging Silas and Clara outside to admire every flower, every bird, every proof that the world was waking up. Look, Papa, buttercups, just like the horse. Buttercup the horse came first. The flowers were named after her. Lily's eyes went wide. Really? No. Silas's face was perfectly straight. I'm lying. Papa? She smacked his arm with 5-year-old indignation. That's not nice. Who said I was nice? Mama did. She said you were the nicest man she ever met. Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks as Silas turned to look at her with raised eyebrows. Did she now? I said no such thing. Yes, you did. You said it to Maggie at the store. You said Papa was. How about we go check on Copper? Clara interrupted hastily. I bet he's wondering where you are. Lily was easily distracted, racing off toward the barn with her usual energy. Clara avoided Silas's gaze, but she could feel his smirk. Nicest man you ever met, huh? Don't let it go to your head. Too late. He caught her hand and pulled her close. But I appreciate the sentiment, even if you were lying to Maggie. Who says I was lying? Something shifted in his expression, softened. Clara. What? I love you. The words hung in the air between them, simple and profound. Clara's heart stuttered. What did you say? You heard me. His voice was rough. I love you. Been wanting to say it for weeks. Just couldn't figure out how. Silas, you don't have to say it back. I know it soon. I know we started this whole thing as a business arrangement, but somewhere along the way, it stopped being practical and started being real. You're real. What I feel for you is real. And I needed you to know that. Clara's eyes filled with tears. Not sad tears, not anymore. Something brighter. I love you too. Relief flooded his face. Yeah. She laughed, the sound watery but genuine. I've been wanting to say it too. Just didn't want to scare you off. Woman, you walked through a blizzard carrying a dying child. You stood up to Marcus Whitmore in a courtroom. You married a stranger to protect your daughter. He cupped her face in his hands. Nothing you could say would scare me off. Not now. Not ever. She kissed him then, right there in the yard, where anyone could see. And she didn't care. Let Joe see. Let the whole territory see. She was Clara Brennan, and she loved her husband, and nothing was going to take that away. The letter arrived in late April, delivered by a writer Clara didn't recognize. It bore an official seal and was addressed to Silas. He read it in silence, his expression darkening with each line. What is it? Clara's stomach knotted with familiar fear. Is it Marcus? Is he? It's not Marcus. Silas handed her the letter. It's from Helena, the prosecutor's office. Clara scanned the contents, her confusion growing. They want you to testify about what? The fire. His voice was flat. The one that killed Martha and the baby. Apparently their investigation into Marcus turned up something else. Something about that night. What kind of something? They think it wasn't an accident. He met her eyes, and she saw 6 years of suppressed rage burning there. They think someone said it deliberately, and they think they know who. Clara's blood went cold. Who? Man named Henry Cole. Used to work for a cattle baron out of Texas. Same cattle baron who wanted my land. Silas's hands clenched into fists. I always wondered why the fire started so fast. Why I couldn't save them. Told myself it was my fault for being away. But if someone said it on purpose, then it was never your fault. No! His voice broke. But it might have been preventable. If I'd been there. If I'd been more careful. If I'd... Stop. Clara grabbed his arms, forcing him to look at her. Don't do this to yourself. Whatever happened that night, you didn't cause it. You didn't start that fire. And finding out who did that's justice, Silas. That's what Martha deserves. Justice won't bring her back. No, but it might bring you peace. He was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly the tension drained from his shoulders. Will you come with me to Helena? Of course. She pulled him into an embrace. We face everything together, remember? Yeah. His arms tightened around her. I remember. The trip to Helena was harder than the custody hearing. Different kind of hard. Not the fear of losing Lily, but the pain of reopening wounds Silas had spent years trying to close. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed man named Morrison, laid out the evidence with clinical precision. Henry Cole had been seen in the area the night of the fire. Cole had connections to the cattle baron who'd been pressuring Silas to sell. And most damning, Cole had bragged about it to a cellmate while serving time for an unrelated crime. We have enough to arrest him, Morrison said. But we need your testimony about that night. About the threats you received. About what you saw when you came home. Silas sat rigid in his chair, his face carved from stone. You want me to relive it? I want you to help us convict the man who murdered your family. Clara reached over and took Silas's hand. He gripped it like a lifeline. What exactly do you need? She asked. Morrison explained. Dates, details, conversations. Everything Silas could remember about the cattle baron's attempts to buy his land, about the escalating threats about the night he'd ridden home to find nothing but ashes and graves. It took 3 hours. 3 hours of Silas talking, his voice flat and dead, recounting the worst night of his life, while Clara sat beside him and held on. When it was finally over, they walked out of the prosecutor's office into the late afternoon sun. Silas stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, his shoulders shaking. I never told anyone, he said hoarsely. Not the whole thing. Not even Joe. You told me. That's different. How? He turned to look at her, and she saw the tears he wasn't bothering to hide. Because you're my wife. Because you're the person I trust most in this world. Because without you, I never would have had the strength to walk into that room and say those words out loud." Clara pulled him into her arms right there on the street and held him while he cried. Let the passers-by stare. Let them whisper. Her husband was breaking open and she was going to be there to help him put the pieces back together. They stayed in Helena for the trial. 3 weeks of testimony, evidence, cross-examination. Clara sat in the gallery every day, her hand finding Silas's whenever the proceedings became too much. Henry Cole was convicted of murder and arson. The cattle baron was implicated, but fled to Mexico before he could be arrested. It wasn't perfect justice, but it was something. On the day of the verdict, Silas stood on the courthouse steps and looked up at the sky for a long time. "She knows," he said finally. "Martha, wherever she is, she knows. I believe that. Thank you." He turned to face Clara. "For being here, for standing by me, for making me strong enough to do this. You were always strong enough. You just needed someone to remind you." He smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached his eyes. "Ready to go home?" "More than ready." They collected Lily from Maggie's, where she'd been staying during the trial, and headed back to the ranch. The journey felt lighter than any before, not just because the legal battles were over, but because something had shifted in Silas. The guilt he'd carried for 6 years was finally beginning to lift. "Papa," Lily's voice piped up from the wagon seat, "are you happy now?" Silas looked at Clara, then at their daughter. "Yeah, little one. I think I finally am." "Good." She snuggled closer to him. "Because happy is the best thing to be. Mama says so." "Your mama's a smart woman." "The smartest," Lily agreed. "That's why you married her, right? One of the reasons." "What are the other reasons?" Silas pretended to think about it. "Well, she makes good biscuits. Papa. And she's pretty. Papa. And she puts up with you, which takes a special kind of patience." Lily giggled, her indignation forgotten. "You're silly." "Don't tell anyone. I have a reputation to maintain." Clara listened to them banter, her heart full to bursting. This was her family now. This scarred rancher and his silly jokes. This bright-eyed little girl who called him Papa. This life they'd built from nothing but desperation and determination, and something that had grown into love. They reached the ranch as the sun was setting, painting everything in shades of gold and rose. Joe was waiting on the porch, Copper prancing in the paddock, everything exactly as they'd left it. Home. Clara had never really had one before, not like this. Not a place that felt like it would hold her forever. But she had one now, and she was never letting it go. That night, after Lily was asleep and the house was quiet, Silas led Clara to the room that had been locked since she first arrived. The nursery. "I want to show you something." He opened the door and Clara gasped. The room had been transformed. Fresh paint on the walls. New curtains in the windows. The old crib, lovingly restored, stood in the corner with fresh bedding. "Silas, what?" "I've been working on it," he said quietly. "While you were sleeping. While you were busy with Lily. I wanted to surprise you." "But why?" He turned to face her, and his expression held something she couldn't quite name. "Because I'm ready. Ready to stop living in the past. Ready to build something new." He took her hands. "Clara, I know we haven't talked about it. I know it's probably too soon. But I want you to know that if we ever... Understanding dawned. "A baby. Only if you want." His voice was rough. "I'm not assuming anything. I know you already have Lily. I know that might be enough. It's enough for me, more than enough. But this room's been empty for 6 years, and I thought maybe..." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "You want children with me. I want everything with you." He cupped her face in his hands. "Everything you're willing to give. And if that includes a baby, then I'd be the happiest man alive." She kissed him, pouring everything she felt into it. The love, the gratitude, the hope. Yes, she whispered against his lips. Yes to everything. Yes to babies, and growing old together and fighting and making up and all of it. Yes. Silas lifted her off her feet and spun her around, laughing. Actually laughing, the sound rusty but real. You mean it? I mean it. Forever and beyond. He set her down and looked at her with such tenderness that Clara felt her heart might burst. I love you, Clara Brennan. I love you too, Silas Brennan. And in the nursery, that had been a tomb for 6 years, something new began. The summer that followed was the happiest the Brennan Ranch had ever known. Clara's garden bloomed with vegetables and herbs, the horses thrived under Silas's care, and Lily grew taller every day, her laughter ringing through the house like music. But the greatest change was the one growing inside Clara. She suspected it first in late June, when the smell of coffee made her stomach turn. By July, when her dresses began to feel tight and her exhaustion seemed endless, she was certain. She told Silas on a warm evening sitting together on the porch, while Lily chased fireflies in the yard. I'm pregnant. He went very still. You're sure? Dr. Hayes confirmed it this morning. The baby should come in February. For a long moment Silas didn't speak. Clara's heart hammered, sudden fear gripping her. What if he wasn't ready? What if the memories of losing Martha and their son were too painful? What if? Then he was on his knees in front of her, his hands on her belly, his face wet with tears. A baby, he whispered. Our baby. Our baby. He looked up at her, and Clara saw everything in his eyes. Joy, terror, hope, love, all tangled together in a storm of emotion. I'm scared, he admitted. Scared something will go wrong. Scared I'll lose you like I lost. You won't. She covered his hands with hers. I'm not Martha, and this isn't that time. We have a good doctor, we have each other, and we have faith. Faith. He said the word like he was testing it, like it was something he'd forgotten how to use. Yes, faith that we've been through too much to lose now. Faith that this baby is meant to be. Faith that whatever comes, we'll face it together. She tilted his chin up, making him meet her eyes. Can you believe that? He was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. I can try. That's all I ask. Lily's reaction to the news was pure, uncomplicated joy. A baby. A real baby. Is it going to be a boy or a girl? Can I name it? Can I hold it? Will it sleep in the nursery? Will it like horses? Will it... Slow down, little one. Silas laughed, swinging her up onto his shoulders. The baby won't be here until winter. We've got time for all those questions. But I want to know now. Some things are worth waiting for. Like presents. Better than presents. Lily considered this seriously. Better than copper. Different than copper, but just as special. She seemed satisfied with this answer, though Clara suspected the questions would continue for the next 7 months. That was fine. She had answers for all of them, or at least she'd find them. The pregnancy changed things in small ways. Silas became even more protective, hovering whenever Clara did anything more strenuous than walking. She had to ban him from the kitchen after he tried to stop her from lifting a cast-iron pot. I'm pregnant, not invalid. You're carrying my child. Let me worry. You can worry, but from outside the kitchen. Joe found the whole thing hilarious. Never seen that man so wound up, he told Clara one afternoon. Not even when Martha was expecting. Maybe because this time he knows what could go wrong. He's not going to lose me. I know that. He'll figure it out eventually. Joe's weathered face softened. Give him time, Clara. He's learning how to hope again. That's harder than it looks. So Clara gave him time. Let him hover. Let him fuss. Let him place his hand on her growing belly every night before sleep, feeling for kicks that wouldn't come for months yet. It was annoying. It was also the sweetest thing anyone had ever done for her. Autumn brought changes of its own. Maggie O'Brien announced she was closing her boarding house and moving to San Francisco to live with her sister. The farewell party she threw became the social event of the season, with half the territory showing up to wish her well. "You've been a good friend," Clara told her, hugging her tight. "I don't know what I would have done without you. You would have survived. That's what you do." Maggie pulled back, her eyes bright. "But I'm glad I could help. And I'm glad you found happiness, Clara. You deserve it." "So do you." "Oh, I intend to find it. San Francisco's full of eligible widowers, or so I'm told." She winked. "Don't worry about me. Worry about that baby of yours. And that husband. Lord knows he needs someone to keep him in line." Clara laughed. "That he does." As winter approached, the ranch settled into preparation. Silas insisted on having everything ready months in advance. The nursery fully stocked, firewood piled high, the root cellar overflowing with preserved food. Clara let him plan and prepare, understanding that control was how he managed fear. Dr. Hayes visited monthly, then weekly, as her time grew closer. Each visit ended the same way: "Everything looks fine. The baby is healthy. Try not to worry." Silas worried anyway. "What if there's a storm?" he asked one night 3 weeks before her due date. "What if the doctor can't get through? What if—" "Then we'll manage." Clara took his hand and placed it on her belly where the baby was kicking up a storm of its own. "Women have been giving birth for thousands of years without doctors. I'll be fine." "You can't know that." "No, but I can believe it. And so can you." She kissed him slow and sure. "Trust me, Silas. Trust us. We've come too far to fall apart now." He held her close, his face buried in her hair. "I love you so much it scares me." "I know. I love you too. And that's why everything's going to be all right." The baby came on a February morning with snow falling softly outside and the fire crackling in the hearth. Clara's labor started before dawn, waking her with pains that told her immediately this was it. "Silas." She shook him awake. "It's time." He was out of bed, instantly pulling on clothes, his face pale in the lamplight. "I'll get the doctor." "Send Joe. I need you here." He hesitated, torn between wanting to do something and wanting to stay. "Please," Clara said. "I don't want to do this alone." That decided it. He called for Joe, who rode out into the snow without a word, then returned to Clara's side and didn't leave. The hours that followed were the hardest of Clara's life. The pain was overwhelming, wave after wave of it, worse than anything she'd experienced with Lily. She gripped Silas's hand until her knuckles went white, and he held on just as tight, his face a mask of barely controlled terror. "You're doing great," he kept saying. "You're so strong. Just hold on. Just a little longer." "Easy for you to say," she gasped between contractions. "You're not the one pushing a watermelon out of—" Another wave hit, cutting off her words. She screamed, and somewhere in the distance she heard Silas praying, actually praying words she'd never heard from him before. "Please, God, please, not again. Don't take her from me. Not again." "I'm not going anywhere," Clara managed. "Stop planning my funeral and help me breathe." The doctor arrived as the sun rose, stomping snow off his boots and taking charge with calm efficiency. He examined Clara, nodded approvingly, and told Silas to boil water. "Keep him busy," he murmured to Clara when Silas was gone. "That man's about to wear a hole in the floor." "He's scared." "I know. But you're doing fine. The baby's in position. Shouldn't be long now." It wasn't. At 9:14 in the morning, Clara gave one final push and felt the release. The rush, the sudden emptiness, followed by the most beautiful sound in the world. A baby's cry. "It's a boy," Dr. Hayes announced, cutting the cord. "Strong lungs. 10 fingers, 10 toes. Perfect." He placed the baby on Clara's chest and she looked down at the tiny, squalling, red-faced miracle she and Silas had created together. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "Welcome to the world." Silas stood frozen in the doorway, the kettle forgotten in his hands. His face was white, his eyes fixed on the baby like he was seeing a ghost. "Silas?" Clara's voice was gentle. "Come meet your son." He crossed the room slowly, setting down the kettle, his movements mechanical. When he reached the bed, he stopped staring at the baby with an expression Clara couldn't read. "He's real," Silas said hoarsely. "He's really here. He's really here. Do you want to hold him?" He nodded, unable to speak. Clara transferred the baby to his arms, showing him how to support the head, watching as her husband held their son for the first time. And then Silas Brennan, the man who'd buried his wife and child, who'd spent 6 years as a ghost in his own life, who'd built walls so high no one could reach him, broke down and wept. "I thought I'd never have this again," he choked out. "Never get to hold my own child. Never get to—" He couldn't finish. Clara reached up and touched his face, wiping away tears that were immediately replaced by more. "You have it," she said softly. "You have all of it. A wife, a son, a daughter who's probably driving Joe crazy right now, wondering what's taking so long. You have a family, Silas. A real family. I don't deserve this. Maybe not, but you have it anyway, and you're going to be the best father this baby could ever hope for." She smiled through her own tears. "Now stop crying and let me see my son." He laughed a wet, broken sound and handed the baby back. "What should we name him?" Clara had been thinking about this for months. She'd considered naming him after Thomas, after Silas's father, after any number of relatives and friends. But in the end, only one name felt right. "James," she said. "James Thomas Brennan, after Martha's family name and mine." Silas went very still. "James was what Martha wanted to name." "I know, you told me." Clara looked up at him. "Is that okay? If it's too painful, we can choose something else." "No." His voice was thick. "No, it's perfect. It's exactly right." He leaned down and kissed her forehead. "Thank you. For everything." Lily's introduction to her baby brother was everything Clara had hoped for, and more. "He's so tiny," she exclaimed, peering into the cradle where James slept. "Was I ever that tiny?" "Tinier?" Clara said. "You were early. And now I'm big, so he'll get big too, right? Eventually, but it'll take a while." "That's okay." Lily reached down and very gently touched the baby's hand. "I can wait. I'm good at waiting." James's tiny fingers closed around hers, and Lily's face lit up with wonder. "Papa, look. He's holding my hand." "I see that." Silas's voice was rough with emotion. "I think he likes you." "Of course he does. I'm his sister." She said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "I'm going to teach him everything. How to ride horses and find the best rocks and talk to Copper, and one thing at a time, little one, he needs to learn to walk first. I can teach him that too." Clara and Silas exchanged a look over their daughter's head, a look full of love and gratitude and quiet amazement at the life they'd built. "I think she's got this handled," Clara murmured. "I think you're right." The months that followed were a blur of sleepless nights and endless feedings. First smiles and first steps, laughter and chaos, and the beautiful mess of a growing family. James was an easy baby, calmer than Lily had been content to watch the world with wide, curious eyes. He had Silas's dark hair and Clara's blue eyes, and his first word was Papa, delivered with a toothless grin that made Silas's eyes go suspiciously bright. He said it. He actually said it. "Babies usually start with Papa or Mama," Clara pointed out. "It doesn't mean anything. It means everything." She didn't argue, because she understood. For a man who'd lost everything, every small moment was a miracle. On James's first birthday, they threw a party. Nothing elaborate, just the family, Joe Maggie, who'd come back from San Francisco for a visit, and a few neighbors who'd become friends over the past year. But it was more than enough. "To James," Silas said, raising his glass of cider, "may your life be full of love and adventure and everything your parents never had." "To James," everyone echoed. Lily clinked her glass against her brother's cup, splashing milk everywhere. "And to Copper," she added, "because he deserves a toast too." "To Copper," Silas agreed solemnly. "The finest horse in Montana Territory." "The finest horse in the world, Papa." "My mistake." After the guests left and the children were in bed, Silas and Clara sat on the porch watching the stars emerge. It had become their ritual, this quiet time at the end of each day, just the two of them. "I've been thinking," Silas said. "Dangerous habit." He smiled, but his expression was serious. "About the past. About everything that happened to get us here." Clara waited. "If you'd asked me 2 years ago where I'd be today, I would have said alone. Dead inside, waiting for my own end." He turned to look at her. "I never imagined this. Never let myself imagine it. And now I can't remember what my life was like before you walked through that blizzard. I can tell you what it was like. Lonely. Dark. Empty. How do you know? Because mine was the same. Before Thomas died. Before I lost everything. Before I showed up on your doorstep half frozen with a dying child." She took his hand. "We saved each other, Silas. That's what I believe. That's what I'll always believe." "You really think it was fate, us finding each other?" "I think it was something. Call it fate, call it God, call it two broken people who happened to break in complementary ways." She squeezed his hand. "All I know is I'm grateful, every single day. For you, for this life, for everything." Silas was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled something from his pocket, a small velvet box. "I wanted to give you this. Should have done it a long time ago, but I was waiting for the right moment." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, not her wedding band, which she still wore, but something new. A delicate gold band set with a small sapphire that caught the starlight. "It was my grandmother's," he said. "Martha wore it when we got engaged. After she died, I put it away. Couldn't look at it. But now," he took a breath, "now I want you to have it. Not because of what it meant before, but because of what it means now. A promise, a commitment, a symbol of everything we've built together." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Silas." "You don't have to wear it if it's too strange. If the connection to Martha makes you uncomfortable, it doesn't." She pulled the ring from the box and slipped it onto her finger, right next to her wedding band. "It's perfect. You're perfect. This whole impossible, beautiful life we have is perfect." He kissed her, then soft and slow, with all the love he'd learned to feel again. "Thank you," he whispered against her lips. "For what?" "For finding me. For saving me. For giving me a reason to live again." He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "I love you, Clara Brennan. More than I have words to say. More than I ever thought I could love anyone again. I love you too. Forever and beyond. Forever and beyond." They sat together until the stars wheeled overhead and the night deepened around them. Inside the house, their children slept peacefully. In the barn, the horses dozed in their stalls. And on the porch of a ranch that had once been a tomb, two people who'd lost everything found everything again in each other. Some stories begin with once upon a time. This one began with a woman dying in the snow and a man who'd forgotten how to live. It began with desperation and despair, with grief so deep it felt like drowning, with walls built to keep out pain that only succeeded in keeping out life. But it didn't end there. It ended with a family gathered around a table with laughter echoing through rooms that had been silent for years, with a little girl teaching her baby brother to wave, and a man who'd buried his heart learning to let it beat again. It ended with love, not the fairy tale kind, but something stronger, The kind forged in fire and loss, tempered by grief, made unbreakable by the simple choice to keep going. Clara Brennan had walked through a blizzard to find her salvation. Silas Brennan had opened his door to find his redemption. And together they'd built something neither had dared to hope for. A home, a family, a future. Not perfect, never perfect, but theirs, forever and beyond.